the bathroom.
Fear, an emotional response to a perceived danger. Note the phrasing here, perceived. Perception is a cognitive process by which we organize and interpret sensory information to understand our environment. Through rational cognition, the stimulus is categorized and compared to the perceiver's catalog of previous experiences, and subsequently labeled a threat or non-threat. Since we know a film isn't real, our minds react accordingly, but our brains can still trigger a physiological response, such as sweating, increased heart rate, and breathlessness. Hormones are released which slow digestion, sharpen the senses, and increase blood flow. But why would anyone want to deliberately scare themselves? From an evolutionary perspective, the social transmission of fear is an advantageous behavior that promotes survival, a way of warning our peers of the dangers of the world. This may be an underlying reason, but in a more conventional setting, this explanation feels somewhat unsatisfactory. On a biological level, the hormones released during the fight or flight response, such as adrenaline, create a natural high and can be enjoyed in the safe context of viewing a film. For the humanists, overcoming fear by finishing a frightening film can boost one's self-esteem, filling them with a sense of accomplishment. Some psychologists also theorize that we watch scary movies because they help us to release our anxiety. Of course, we shouldn't overlook the obvious, however, that watching scary movies is a socio-cultural tradition and can be fun. According to Harvard Health, a phobia is a persistent, excessive, unrealistic fear of an object, person, animal, activity, or situation. It is a type of anxiety disorder. A person with a phobia either tries to avoid the thing that triggers the fear or endures it with great anxiety and distress. Phobias can be an important tool to recognizing what makes a certain stimulus scary. For example, coulrophobia, or the intense fear of clowns, can be linked to the fear of distorted forms, which can be further linked to the fear of the unknown, and ultimately, death. One of the most essential elements to the fear of clowns is the uncanny valley effect, in which expectations of normal human behavior are set and subsequently subverted, causing cognitive dissonance which manifests as fear. Clowns are humanoid, and we recognize a human face, but we don't know for certain what lies behind the makeup, which itself restricts or exaggerates their features and expressions. It is a typical human behavior to smile when first meeting an individual, a fear response to assure the stranger that you are not a threat. A clown's smile never fades. A skillful storyteller of any genre understands the need to establish audience empathy in their fiction. Creating a personal connection with the viewer serves two purposes. Firstly, it more easily allows the audience to embody the protagonist or victim. And, secondly, by preying on relatable, real fears, the filmmaker can instill true terror in their audience. We don't want to trigger a psychosis, but we do want to frighten and unnerve our viewers, not simply startling them with cheap gimmicks. I've noticed a decline in true slashers as the horror genre devolves into CGI-riddled, big-budget, by-the-numbers theme rides, plagued with predictable jump scares. Let's go ahead and address the elephant in the room. A jump scare is a tool to increase tension, not a payoff. It's startling, but it is merely a fleeting moment of fear, ultimately hollow and lacking in suspense. True terror pierces your psyche and stays lodged in your mind like a splinter in soft flesh. It haunts your subconscious, lives in your dreams and memories. We all know tension when we see it, or rather, when we feel it. It's that unrelenting, uncomfortable feeling of trepidation. A clever filmmaker can elevate your anxiety with anything from manipulating the focus or framing, sound effects, music stings, etc. However, I think the most important element of creating tension is what we do not see, because ultimately our imagination is more powerful than anything we could project on screen. Hitchcock's bomb-under-the-table approach to suspense smithing lets the audience in on the threat, but leverages their empathy to create dramatic tension. This explores a concept in cinema I'm going to call denial of stimuli, the deliberate withholding of sensory information. Film as a medium is limited to two senses, sight and sound, but this restriction can work to a skilled storyteller's advantage because the audience only has access to what they can see and hear, and by manipulating one or the other, the filmmaker can have a profound effect on the viewer. Let's see some of these concepts in action in Alfred Hitchcock's 1960 classic film, Psycho. Since Marion is still our protagonist at this point, we empathize with her and share her perspective. We have a relatable location, in this case, a shower. Marion is naked, the most vulnerable state a person can be. Running water lowers our ability to hear, and the curtain our ability to see. Her senses are dulled within the context of the scene, and in turn, the audiences are as well. A shadow looms in the background, unnoticed by Marion. There's our metaphorical bomb. When the curtain is ripped back, the intruder's face is shadowed. We can't read their expression, but we can identify the unmistakable silhouette of a knife. Rapid cuts of close-ups create a claustrophobic space, and the viewer is as helpless as Marion as she's stabbed to death. The last we see of her is her unblinking eye. During the pandemic, when facial masks became a regular addition to our wardrobes, I began to think about the importance of our eyes in communication. Verbal communication is hampered, thus, our other senses must now compensate for the decreased access to auditory information. Eye contact is one of many forms of nonverbal communication, arguably the most important method to understanding others. Emotion is expressed through the openness of the eye, the distance from the eyebrow to the eye, the slope and curve of the eyebrow, and wrinkles around the nose, temple, and below the eye. Negative feelings such as disgust, discrimination, suspicion, and disapproval are associated with narrow-eyed expressions, and open-eyed expressions with curiosity and joy. In Psycho, eyes are used to great effect. We hear Marion's thoughts as she drives away. She never opens her mouth, but we can tell exactly how she feels through her eyes and facial expressions. Visual storytelling by way of skilled acting at its finest. Blinking is a mundane human behavior, so common that you may not even notice it. But what if we took it away? Recall the uncanny valley effect, in which expectations of human behavior are set but not met. Staring creates feelings of hostility or uneasiness. When eyes meet, not only are you seeing someone or something, but you've been seen. There's nowhere to run in a theater, and the audience is forced to submit to an unbroken gaze. In Psycho, the police officer that approaches Marion has his eyes obscured by dark shades, emphasizing the sense of mistrust and obscuring his intentions. This is another example of stimulus denial, and this restriction increases the suspense of the scene dramatically by exploiting the fear of the unknown. Concealing the eyes is a staple of horror, as seen by many of its most popular icons. This hollow-eyed imagery is reminiscent of a skull, which may suggest death or danger, triggering a fear response on an unconscious level. Your mind is filled with questions. What could be behind that mask? Are they even human? When we do finally get a glimpse, it makes them more vulnerable, or even pitiful. The ultimate case of stimulus denial through a lack of eye contact is the primary antagonist of the Alien film franchise, the xenomorph, whose eyes are missing entirely. Its shape is humanoid, but it has no visible eyes. The big chap suit used in the first film has a human-like skull just barely visible under its domed head. Eyes are supremely important to a character's ability to emote, and a critical component to our communication. It's so foundational, in fact, it can even bypass language barriers. Can you think of any other films or scenes where eyes take the center stage in visual storytelling? Pennywise, in 2017's It, utilizes the staring technique often. His eyes have an unnatural color and move in an unnatural way, instantly communicating to the viewer that something isn't quite right about him. Speaking of which, remember our discussion on Phobia? Let's consider Pennywise and apply what we've learned to a couple of films about a spooky clown. As someone who doesn't like clowns, in my opinion, I find the 2017 design to be rather obvious when in comparison to the 1990s original. Pennywise is a clown and should be bright, colorful, and inviting, which makes it more believable that children would be drawn to him, and shocking when he does terrible things to them. The modern look is drab and trying much too hard to be creepy. I can't help but feel it would be more interesting if he started off as looking more akin to the original, and as his facade was revealed, his colors fade, much like his eyes do in the film. For me, the real strength is in the superb performance by Bill Skarsgård. That said, the foundation is there, and it is an interesting visual interpretation. Pennywise is still clearly identifiable as a clown. Let's look at this first appearance, the most iconic scene.
I'd love to show you the clip, but I'm pretty sure if I did, my eternal nemesis Warner Brothers would strike me down. So, enjoy these stills.
The film establishes audience empathy early on. Everyone was at some point a child. Some even have a child, or in this case, a younger sibling. Storm drains are a common sight in suburban America, so our location checks out. Georgie is alone, an endangered child, though he does not know it yet. The scene has an initially innocent and whimsical tone until it literally smacks us in the face with the fact that we're watching a scary movie. It's steadily paced and lightly scored, slowing with the arrival of the clown. Pennywise pops up with an obnoxious audio sting, and cue the spooky. His figure is engulfed in shadow, denying the audience a full look at him. It's as though we're looking into the abyss of the unknown. Once the conversation begins, the fact that they're strangers is brought up, and Pennywise eases Georgie's suspicion by acting like a clown, which makes his monstrous conversion even scarier. Despite the silly CGI monster face, the scene isn't bad. I think it's a little heavy on the music and too light on Foley. What's most interesting is that this scene is basically redone even better in the nearly incomprehensible sequel. Boy, really putting that psychology minor to work in this one, huh? I hope you learned something at least. This subject was something I was thinking about for a while, and I thought it would make for a great video for Halloween. Obviously, it's January. I know it's a bit overdue, college is a bitch. Horror is my favorite genre, if you couldn't tell already. I've been exploring vampire films recently, and the last one I watched was Thirst, directed by Park Chan-wook. It's phenomenal. I've been wanting to make a video on vampires, but I haven't found a fresh angle on them yet. Not sure if I have a favorite scary or horror movie, but there's a lot that I love. I'm interested to know if you agree with my assessment of what makes a film scary. Got a recommendation for a film or concept you think is worth exploring? Be sure to comment and let me know. Like the video, click the notification button, and follow me on Instagram at blackpearl_presents for updates and behind the scenes insights. Thanks for watching. Stay safe, and I'll see you in the next video.
What an asshole!